Have you ever been looking for cabins up here in Montana on a lake and noticed the prices, and then all of a sudden you see one that's been on the market for a long time and it's way cheaper than everything else around there? Well, there is a catch, and in this video I'm going to tell you what that is and what you need to know before buying one of these properties. Alright, so I climbed all the way up this mountain to give you a better view of Montana. So the least you can do is subscribe to our channel. And when you do, don't forget to hit the little bell and you'll be notified every time we make a new video about Montana. So we get calls all the time from people that see a property, a lake property, that's super cheap, and they're like, oh my God, Will, you got to put in an offer. That's the spot. We can't believe there's something in our price range. And the reason is because a lot of these properties that are way under everything else is because here in Montana, we have a lot of leased land. And as you can see, this little lake behind me here is a beautiful spot, and obviously a place that people want to be and people would love to have a cabin on. And so there's a lot of people looking for lakefront property. And in Montana, we don't have tons and tons of lakes like you may have in the Midwest, but the lakes we do have are high in demand. Everybody wants a spot here, and why wouldn't you? So anyway, these leased properties, obviously, they're way cheaper than regular homes that are actually you own the land and you own everything. These lease properties are through the state, the lease is through the state, and you have to pay a fee that I'll put up in a little bit here and show you. It can be quite expensive, and there's a lot of catches with these houses or these cabins that you need to be careful of, and I'm going to go through a few of the things here that you need to know if you buy one of these, well, if you get into one of these leases. So you have to remember, the main thing is you do not own the land. You own the house or the cabin, whatever's on it, but you do not own the land. So the state at any time they kind of dictate what happens there. There was a story about a lake that was west of Kalispell a few years ago where they hadn't raised the lease prices in 25 years. I forget what the exact time was, but everyone was paying these small little, $1,000 a month lease prices, or $1,000 a year, maybe a couple thousand, I'm not sure. But then the state realized, hey, we haven't been getting what we deserve or what these are worth, so they put in this graduated rate that went up immensely within a 10-year period, and people were actually picking up their houses and moving them off the lot and just giving the lease back to the state, because it went from a couple $1,000s a year to $20-some thousand a year. And we can look at this chart right here. This particular chart starts out pretty low for the first year, but then as you can see, it goes way up, and that's the way it is with a lot of these leases now. The state has finally caught up and decided they're going to get what the true value is, and that's why you will find some of these houses for so cheap. Even though they're lakefront property, it's because you're buying into this lease, and this is a payment you have to make every year, no matter what. It's just like if you rent a house, they can evict you if you're not paying your lease. So some of the things that, people have asked me and they think about doing is they still think, well, I can afford this lease because I'll just do an Airbnb or rent it out when I'm not there and make a bunch of money renting out this lake property. Well, of course, that's one of the things you can't do, that's not allowed on these leases through the state. Same with RVs. You can't have people park a bunch of RVs on the property because that's considered an improvement, and you'd have to get that approved through the state. But right now, that's not allowed unless you go through the process of getting something approved. Another thing is if you want to build another cabin or a shed or whatever you may think you need, a little shed to store all your lake toys, everything has to go through the state. It's not like you own the land, or it's not like you own the property at all. Everything has to go through the state, and that's one of the many reasons that these properties are so cheap. So the other thing that I've had people run into is they don't think about the lease price. They think, oh, look at this place is listed for $300,000. My mortgage on that's going to be, you know, whatever, $3,000 a month, $2,500, depending on what they put down, depending on the interest rate. As you know, there's a million variables that go into that. But let's just say their lease is, or their mortgage is $3,000 a month. Well, then you're going to, like the chart I showed you a minute ago, you need to tack that on every year too. So the money you're paying yearly is going to go up immensely from just your mortgage. Normally on a normal mortgage in town or anywhere, you're going to have your homeowner's insurance tied into it and your taxes. Well, with this, you're also tacking on the $20-some thousand a year for your lease as well. So that's going to totally mess with your payment that you got to come up with every month for your place on the lake. Another thing to keep in mind that we get asked all the time too is if it's a bigger piece of property, can you hunt on it? Well, the answer is no to that as well, because again, this is state land that you're leasing, not your land. The other thing you should think about as well is these leases are usually about 15 years, so it'll depend on how long the person you're buying it from has been under this current lease. But at the end of the 15 years, remember, it's the state's land. The thing that happened west of Kalispell at Rogers Lake was they just jacked up the leases hugely, and people started realizing they couldn't afford it anymore, so they actually had home movers pick up their houses and move them off the lot because they couldn't afford it anymore and they didn't own the land. So whenever these leases are up, the state's going to dictate what the next lease is going to entail, and you may not like that at all, or you know, it could work out. The biggest issue is you don't know what's going to happen, and so if you get into one of these leases, that's the chance you're going to take. There's no guarantee that in 15 years or 10 years or whatever's left on the lease that everything's going to remain the same. So it can be a pretty big gamble. The moral of the story, do your homework, make sure you know what you're getting into, and make sure you know what you're going to be paying for this cabin that you got the smoking deal on. So if you'd like information on any lake cabins or any properties for sale around Montana, let us know and we'd be happy to help.
Thank you for watching our video. Please call, text, or email for more information, and don't forget to watch our other videos about Montana.